Hello. I am in the middle, as you might have noticed, of some sort of hiatus, and that by that I mean I'm not making three of these a day. But I have been pulled out of a Thanksgiving-induced coma in order to talk about Liverpool because while I have been traveling home for Thanksgiving, and while I have been enjoying a truly troubling amount of turkey and ham and sweet potato casserole, and then more sweet potato casserole, some broccoli cheese casserole, some mashed potatoes, some gravy, some stuffing, some cranberry sauce. Just, that was the appetizer. Anyways, I'm going to get distracted and then I'm going to go eat again and I'll never record this video. I noticed that Liverpool lost to PSV. Not only did they lose to PSV, they lost to PSV at home. They lost to PSV at home 4-1. Now, I've made a video not too long ago about how Liverpool was kind of headed in the wrong direction. And since then, they beat Real Madrid and all seemed right with the world. But I'm just going to show you something that is a little jarring to look at in the first place. That Liverpool, the reigning champions of the Premier League, have lost 3 consecutive matches by at least 3 goals, 2 of them to Nottingham Forest and PSV. It is clear that whatever has contributed to this remarkable downturn, which has been disrupted by random 5-1 against Eintracht Frankfurt and that 1-0 win at home against Real Madrid, where everybody thought everything was all right with the world again, that whatever is wrong with them is still wrong. But there are people talking about firing Arne Slot, and I also think that is incredibly stupid. But there are a lot of interesting different pieces to this that I want to pick at, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some stuff that you feel like I should have talked about. But I want to start with the fact that Liverpool, in the last 30 plus years, has won 2 league titles. Dos. Jurgen Klopp got one of them, right? Jurgen steered his team past an all-time Manchester City to grab one title, and the other one was Arne Slot. He made it look easy. Sure, he kind of inherited the team that he went on to win it with. Sure, Manchester City wasn't the team that they were before, but you know what? Nobody gives a shit. Nobody talks about the fact that Leicester City won their title with 80-something points, while it took Manchester City, in some cases being pushed by Liverpool in that era, like 100. The farther you get away from it, and honestly, even when it happens, who cares? You got more points than any other team in the league, you win the title. And Liverpool is not a team that has won a lot of titles, particularly recently. So if you have a manager that has delivered you one of your 2 Premier League titles, because the last time they won it before, it wasn't called the Premier League, right? The fun fact of the day. You don't get rid of him this quickly. I don't care if you lose the next couple of, right? You don't get rid of a manager that's capable of producing a season of round, confident dominance the way Liverpool produced that in the Premier League last year. You don't get rid of that guy that quickly. And I think it's pretty obvious that if you have a manager that is able to manage a team that's able to get to that point, that the problem here has to lie somewhere else. And one of the obvious things that you can point at, and as it might be the player acquisition. I find this season so interesting for Liverpool because Liverpool, it finally felt like, went out and spent a ridiculous amount of money the way every other English team was going out and spending a ridiculous amount of money. Whether it was Chelsea or Manchester United or Manchester City. Right? These teams, they go and they spend the money that they can spend. I'm not blaming them for spending that money. They should spend that money. It's their money. It is their biggest advantage against teams like Real Madrid in the Premier League. I can say it 100 times. They've got more money coming in. It raises the amount that they can spend under FFP. FFP juices the Premier League incredibly. These clubs just make more money than everybody. Mid-table teams in the Premier League are, they've got more money to spend under FFP if they're willing to spend it than basically anyone in Italy, right? Like the gap is widening. And if you're one of the teams at the top like Liverpool, you've got a crazy amount of money to throw around. They seem to realize it this year. Florian Wirtz, Alexander Isak. And it's interesting to me that when Liverpool finally decides to sit down to spend that money, I'm not saying there's any takeaway from this. I'm just saying that maybe Liverpool doesn't quite know how to do it yet. They sit down and they decide to spend this amount of money and somehow make their team worse. Right? Let's look at the Premier League table, because the last time I made a video about Liverpool, which is the first time I've really ever made a video about Liverpool not being good, they had 4 losses. It was the same number of losses that they had the entirety of their championship campaign. Well, now they have 6. Now they have 6 losses. Already more losses than they had in their championship campaign. They've lost half of the Premier League matches they've played. Their goal difference is -2. It is unrecognizable what they've produced, and it's inexplicable that they would be. I mean, look, I clown Manchester United. I clown them like it's my job. Manchester United's had an objectively better, more competitive season than Liverpool has. They've scored more goals. They've allowed less. They have fewer losses. They've gotten a result in 8 matches instead of 6. I mean, obviously, I'm just pulling random numbers from looking at the table here, but Manchester United, while not exactly transcendent, Manchester United and Tottenham, who were both kind of in the relegation race last year, are ahead of Liverpool right now. They're ahead of Liverpool right now. Both of those are on goal difference, but, I mean, part of that is not getting blown out 3-0 by Nottingham Forest. I know Sean Dyche has got, some sort of magic superpower for just inserting himself into a team and instantly being able to win in impressive fashion. Like survival of the fittest sort of Sean Dyche football, but 3-0. I mean, Liverpool had a mystique at home. There used to be those records that now feel like ancient memories of Virgil van Dijk hasn't lost at home in like 3 million matches. 100 matches, 50 matches, or whatever it was. Right? This group of they've lost at home once in 4 or 5 years. They just lost 3-0 at home to Nottingham Forest and 4-1 at home to PSV in back-to-back matches. And my biggest takeaway dropping into this video is I'm like, look, I don't think you get rid of Arne Slot. I think it's clear Liverpool is having some growing pains with learning how to spend the ridiculous amount of money they should be able to, to spend. But something weird is going on here. And I don't really know exactly what it is. There is no real rational explanation for the fact that Liverpool would be this much. I mean, you had a 3-0 loss at home against Crystal Palace. How many of these losses are at home? That's the thing. When Manchester City was struggling last year, and I don't mean to separate, you could still see Manchester City in there. And this point might land for some people, it might not for others, but hey, I'm your lunch table companion, and I'm sitting here with my post-Thanksgiving ideas. Maybe I'm still suffering from a meat-induced stroke. Maybe I'm making this video out of a coma. I have no idea. But at least for me, when you watched Manchester City, when they were struggling last year, it was still Manchester City. You could feel the Manchester City in there. You could feel it. They just weren't scoring. They had no product in the final third. That last bit of creativity wasn't there, but they were still playing that way, right? They were still in control of the game. They were still boring. They were still suffocating the game. For Liverpool, there is a noted lack of sharpness in this. It feels different. It feels like Liverpool is not trying. It feels like they're not paying attention. In a lot of these matches, the possession and the shots favor Liverpool pretty dramatically, which obviously, analytically, you're going to say, well, over time, Liverpool's going to kind of balance it out because they're in control of the better team. But the XG continues to be very close, which means the teams that Liverpool is playing against, they're getting huge opportunities. Out of the opportunities that they are getting, they are massive. On average, the chances that Nottingham Forest and PSV are getting are way better. Like, Liverpool's just not locked in. What makes a championship team, what makes a club like Liverpool so good over the amount of time that they were great, which they're not great anymore. I think that's pretty obvious. If we look at the Champions League table, which I kind of wanted to look at as well, they're still not in a terrible spot, so I'm not trying to overdo this, right? But they are in 12th after 12 matches. They got 18 points out of 12 matches. They're sandwiched between Everton and Brentford. They are behind Bournemouth and Sunderland and Crystal Palace and Brighton, who's kind of resurged this year as well, although the name's not as impressive to be behind. After 12 matches in the season, you could have gotten unbelievable money if you'd bet on that at the beginning of the year. I mean, you would have thought there wouldn't be that number of teams total, regardless of the name of the team in front of Liverpool at this point in the season. But that sharpness, that competitive champion's edge was gone, obviously, which led to me making this video initially when they lost 5 straight out of nowhere. And it continues to be gone. It continues to be gone. Right when it looked like it might have been fixed, whatever is wrong with Liverpool continues to haunt them. And one of the most crippling things you can go through as a sports team, any sport, is if you have a mystique. Anfield. Liverpool's a tough team to beat. Right? They have the champions mentality. You're always going to have to fight tooth and nail for it. And that mystique goes away, everything gets way harder. Because now, if you're a Nottingham Forest, if you're a PSV and you're playing Liverpool, you have a chance. You feel like you have a chance. There's an old Roman gladiator, right, who said the only way you could guarantee you would win every fight is if the other opponent already knew they were going to lose, or if your opponent already knew they were going to lose. That guy won every fight. Right, and the quote always holds true for me in sports. One of the best things you can have is that mystique that makes the other team doubt themselves. Liverpool has fully lost that now. They are going to have to re-earn that. And to be perfectly honest, they don't look like a team that's going to be able to go out and re-earn that. And I don't mean to overreact here because we are talking about a team that literally beat Real Madrid earlier this month. But the consistently good results of Liverpool, right, are not there. They're not a title threat. They're not going to be a title threat. And they're going to have to, they're going to have to figure out what is causing these problems. Why their defense is so bad. Why Virgil van Dijk feels the need to just reach up and smack a ball away to kick off that PSV match with a penalty. I mean, that sort of play almost looks like they've been paid off. I know they haven't. I'm not making some wild accusation. But it's like their brain is glitching out. And they're just not able to play with that precision with the organization that they're supposed to play with. They're still really good players. It's not like Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak and Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson. It's not like any of these guys, Szoboszlai, these guys haven't forgotten how to play. McAllister hasn't forgotten how to kick a ball. But the confidence isn't there. They're shaky with it. And one or two things that they've tried to do are not working. Do I come to you with any solutions? No. I come to you with thoughts. Those are my thoughts. I'm going to go back into my coma now.